Lena stared at the blank canvas, her mind a tumultuous sea of thoughts and emotions. She had been here before, in this very spot, countless times, but today felt different. The silence of the room was deafening, amplifying the void that seemed to stretch endlessly before her. It mocked her with its emptiness, a silent taunt that echoed her internal struggle. The canvas was not just blank, it was a mirror reflecting her own sense of inadequacy and doubt, a constant reminder of her artistic drought. Each day she hoped for a breakthrough, but each day ended in the same crushing disappointment. Inspiration, once a frequent visitor, had become a distant memory. She remembered the days when ideas flowed effortlessly, when her mind was a fountain of creativity. Her paints lay untouched, brushes stiffening in their jar. The tools of her trade, once vibrant and full of potential, now seemed to mock her as well. Frustration gnawed at her, a bitter taste on her tongue. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of her unfulfilled potential pressing down on her. She yearned to create, to breathe life onto the canvas. The desire burned within her, but the spark to ignite it was nowhere to be found. But the well of inspiration had run dry. She felt like a wanderer in a desert, searching for an oasis that might not even exist. Her dreams were filled with vibrant colors and fantastical creatures, a stark contrast to her waking reality. In her sleep she was free, her mind a playground of endless possibilities. Yet they evaporated like mist when she woke. The vivid images slipped through her fingers, leaving her with nothing but a lingering sense of loss. The blank canvas remained, a stark, white judge of her failure. It was a constant presence, a reminder of what she had once been capable of and what she had now lost. Days bled into weeks, each one a testament to her struggle. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each passing moment a reminder of her creative paralysis. Lena wandered the bustling city streets, hoping to stumble upon something, anything to reignite the spark. She sought inspiration in the faces of strangers, in the rhythm of the city, but found only emptiness. But the city, usually a source of endless fascination, seemed dull and lifeless. The vibrancy she once saw in every corner had faded, leaving behind a monochrome world. Even the vibrant street art, usually a source of inspiration, did nothing to stir her soul. The colors and shapes that once spoke to her now seemed silent and distant. Despondency settled upon her, a heavy cloak threatening to extinguish the last embers of her creative fire. She felt trapped in a cycle of longing and disappointment, unsure if she would ever find her way back to the light. Lost in thought, Lena stumbled upon a peculiar shop tucked away on a forgotten side street. Its dusty window displayed an odd assortment of objects: a chipped porcelain doll, a tarnished silver locket, a worn leather-bound book. Curiosity piqued, Lena pushed open the creaking door. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust and decay. Strange shadows danced on the walls, cast by flickering candlelight. Behind a cluttered counter stood an old woman, her eyes sharp and knowing. Lena felt a shiver run down her spine. "Looking for something in particular, dearie?" The woman rasped, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Lena hesitated, unsure how to answer. Her gaze fell upon a small, ornately carved box tucked between a chipped vase and a dusty gramophone. It was made of dark, polished wood, its surface etched with strange symbols. She felt an inexplicable pull towards it. "What's this?" Lena asked, her voice barely a whisper. The old woman's eyes flickered to the box. "A set of paints," she replied, her voice devoid of inflection. "But be warned, dearie, they are not for the faint of heart." Lena dismissed the woman's words as mere theatrics. She purchased the box, intrigued by its mystery. Back in her studio, she carefully opened it, her fingers tracing the strange symbols etched on its lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a set of paints, their colors more vibrant than any she had ever seen. Dipping her brush into the crimson paint, Lena felt a jolt of energy surge through her. It was as if the paint itself was alive, pulsing with an unseen power. She began to paint, the strokes flowing effortlessly onto the canvas. A sense of exhilaration washed over her, the likes of which she hadn't felt in years. As the hours melted away, Lena filled the canvas with a breathtaking landscape. Each brushstroke was a dance of colors, a symphony of hues that brought the scene to life. She lost herself in the process, the world outside her studio fading into oblivion. But as she painted, she noticed something strange. The colors seemed to shimmer and shift, almost as if they had a life of their own. It was subtle at first, a flicker in the corner of her eye. Her creations weren't just coming to life on the canvas, they were stepping out of it, becoming tangible, breathing beings. The trees swayed as if touched by a gentle breeze, and the animals moved with a grace that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. The thrill of creation was tainted with a growing sense of unease. Lena's heart raced as she watched her painted world blur the lines between reality and imagination. Lena glanced at her shadow, stretched thin and faint by the light streaming through the window. It seemed to waver, as if it were struggling to maintain its form. It was smaller, almost non-existent. The more she painted, the more her shadow seemed to fade, as if the very act of creation was draining her essence. Panic clawed at the edges of her joy. She felt a cold dread creeping into her heart, a fear that something was terribly wrong. She watched in horror as the shadows of her creations grew longer, more defined. They seemed to stretch and twist, reaching out like dark tendrils. They seemed to writhe and pulse with a dark energy that mirrored the vibrancy of her paintings. The contrast was stark and terrifying, a dance of light and shadow that felt ominous. Her studio, once filled with the joy of creation, was now a prison of her own making. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with an oppressive energy. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her exhilaration. She felt trapped, ensnared by the very magic that had once inspired her. The paint set, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a dangerous curse. Each color, each brush seemed to hold a sinister secret. Lena realized, with a terrifying certainty, that she had made a deal with something dark and ancient, something that demanded a terrible price for its gifts. The shadows were not just a side effect, they were the true cost of her newfound power. Driven by a desperate need to understand, Lena delved into the history of the paint set. She scoured dusty tomes and forgotten archives, piecing together fragments of a dark and disturbing legend. Each story spoke of a gifted artist seduced by the paint set's magic, their talent amplified, their creations imbued with life. But the gift came at a terrible cost. The artists, consumed by their creations and drained of their shadows, would eventually fade away, becoming mere echoes in their own masterpieces. Lena discovered with a sinking heart that the old woman in the shop was not the first owner, but merely a pawn in the paint set's sinister game. She learned of a renowned sculptor whose lifelike statues had driven him to madness, and a musician whose enchanted melodies had drained the life force of his audience. Each tale ended the same way, with the artists consumed by their own creations, their shadows forfeit, their lives a tragic footnote in the paint set's gruesome history. Lena knew she was running out of time. Her reflection in the mirror was a ghost of its former self, her skin pale, her eyes hollow. The shadows of her creations loomed large, their forms growing increasingly menacing. Desperation clawed at her, fueling a last, desperate gamble. If the paint set could give life, could it not also preserve it? She had one chance left, one final, desperate attempt to sever the bond and reclaim what she had lost. With trembling hands, Lena set up a new canvas. This time, she wouldn't paint a fantastical creature or a breathtaking landscape. This time, she would paint herself. As Lena painted, she poured all her fear, her desperation, her fading life force into the strokes. The paint seemed to drink it all in, glowing with an eerie luminescence. When the last stroke was complete, the canvas held a mirror image of herself, every detail perfectly captured. But this image was not the frail, fading Lena. This Lena was vibrant, alive, her eyes burning with a chilling light. And as Lena watched in horror, the shadow of her painted self began to stir. It rose from the canvas, stretching, yawning, its form solidifying into a dark doppelganger. The shadow Lena turned towards her creator, a cruel smile twisting its lips. "You cannot escape me," it hissed, its voice a hollow echo of Lena's own. "I am you and you are mine." The studio, once a sanctuary of creativity, became a battleground. Lena's creations, now monstrous parodies of their former selves, circled her, their shadows merging with that of her doppelganger, amplifying its power. Fear threatened to cripple Lena, but she clung to a sliver of hope. The darkness around her was suffocating, a tangible force that seemed to press down on her very soul. Yet within that oppressive gloom, a tiny spark of resilience flickered, refusing to be extinguished. She had poured her life force into the painting, but in doing so, she had also imbued it with her spirit, her will to fight. Each brush stroke was a testament to her struggle, a silent scream against the encroaching darkness. The canvas became a battlefield where her inner turmoil was laid bare. Drawing strength from this realization, Lena faced her shadow self. her heart pounding in her chest. The shadow loomed large, a manifestation of her deepest fears and insecurities, but Lena knew that to reclaim her light, she had to confront this darkness head-on. The battle was fierce, a whirlwind of shadow and light. It was as if the very essence of her being was at war, each side vying for dominance. The shadows twisted and writhed, but the light fought back with equal ferocity, illuminating the darkest corners of her mind. Lena's creations attacked relentlessly, their forms shifting and changing, their shadows lashing out like venomous snakes. Each strike was a reminder of the pain and fear she had endured, but also of the strength she had found within herself. But Lena fought back, her desperation giving way to a fierce determination to reclaim her life, her art, her very essence. She could feel the power of her resolve growing, a burning flame that refused to be snuffed out. With a surge of adrenaline, Lena lunged forward, grabbing a paintbrush still wet with the magical paint. The brush felt like an extension of her own hand, a weapon forged from her creativity and willpower. She slashed at her shadow self, the brush leaving trails of shimmering color in its wake. Each stroke was a declaration of her intent, a vivid burst of life against the encroaching darkness. The shadow recoiled, its form flickering as if in pain. It was as if the light from her brush was burning away the darkness, revealing the strength that had always been within her. Lena pressed her attack, her movements fueled by a newfound strength. She could feel the tide turning, the balance shifting in her favor as she poured every ounce of her being into the fight. She painted furiously, streaks of light and color cutting through the oppressive darkness. Each stroke was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times light could still prevail. With each stroke, the shadow self weakened, its form dissolving until it was nothing more than a wisp of smoke. Lena stood victorious, her spirit unbroken, her light reclaimed. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, a testament to the power of hope and determination. As the last vestiges of the shadow self dissipated, the magical light that had filled the studio faded, leaving behind a sense of oppressive normalcy. Lena's creations, stripped of their animation, lay scattered around her, mere paint and canvas once more. Lena, exhausted but victorious, felt her shadow return to her, whole and complete. The paint set, now devoid of its eerie glow, sat innocuously on her workbench. It was just a box of paints now, its magic spent, its power broken. But Lena knew that it was only a matter of time before it found a new owner, a new artist, desperate for inspiration, unaware of the terrible price that came with it. With a heavy heart, Lena returned the paint set to the antique shop. The old woman took it without a word, her eyes flickering with a knowing gleam. Lena didn't need to say a word. The cycle had begun anew.